Now we want to take a look at how private companies are making space more accessible than ever.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Continuing our conversation about travel to space, Tom Shelley joins me now. He's the president of Space Adventures, which has sent 7 private citizens to the International Space Station. Thank you so much for being here. How did a nice guy like you get involved in space tourism?
Well, Space Adventures has been around a little longer than I've been with the company. I've been there about 7 years. I'm a marketing guy, and they wanted somebody to come in and help market to the real people that we're sending up going to space.
Yeah.
There's a lot of space fans out there, and we've got to try to communicate to the non-space fans as well.
Yeah. So what does it look like now in terms of my options? If I had a couple of $1 million to spend and I wanted very badly to go to space, what are my options?
There's a number of options, and I'd rather you had a little more than a couple $1 million because it would expand your options. We have a program to take a couple private citizens around the far side of the moon. That's going to be the first time that people have been back to the moon in about 40 years.
Which is hard to believe.
It's a little more expensive than a couple million. It's $150 million.
Okay.
And we've got a couple people already who've signed up for that program, and we'll be using the Russian Soyuz spacecraft. We expect that to launch sometime around 2017. We've arranged for 7 people to go up to the International Space Station. You were talking to the astronauts earlier who are up there. Our clients have flown on that same vehicle, the Soyuz, to the space station. They spend about 10, 12 days living and working alongside those professional astronauts. And the singer, Sarah Brightman, is signed up as our next client. She should be launching in 2015.
And so can you imagine a time when going to space will be like going to Six Flags?
Yes, in time. You've got to give it some time. The technology has to reach that point, and we're not there yet. The one very exciting program that's coming down the line that will be more accessible is the suborbital space flight. Companies like Virgin Galactic and ourselves and another group called XCOR are working to develop vehicles that are going to take people just for short periods of time, for about 5 minutes into space. And that's prices for that are around $100,000 to $200,000.
Oh,
so that's a lot more accessible.
Yeah, that's a lot more. Just for 5 minutes, and you just go and you're like high space, and then you come back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not the full-on space experience that our clients have experienced to date, but it does start to give people a taste of what it is like. And importantly, from a technological perspective, it's using a reusable vehicle. So you can, rather than at the moment, you go to space in your rocket and that's it, it's one-time use.
Yeah.
This is a spacecraft that can be reused again and again.
And what's your sense of how space tourism fits into just the larger mission of NASA and space travel more generally?
Well, Scott touched on it. He was talking about us as humans becoming spacefaring. In order to do that, we have to be able to spend more time in space. We have to be able to get there easier and cheaper. And it comes down to the reusability. So what space tourism can do is bring the volume of space flights that we need and can show that people can go there and come back and talk about it from their own experience and inspire others who are around them to want to go as well as contributing to the development of the technology of what it means to live in space.
How do you know when this will be a success? I mean, are you trying to get 10,000 people in space over the next 10 years? I mean, what are the sort of markers you're shooting for?
To this point, there's about 560 people who have ever been into space in the last 50 years of space exploration. I think by the end of this decade, we will have doubled that number.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people will have flown on suborbital. Some will have flown on the orbital spacecraft up to the station. Others will have gone around the far side of the moon. But in just this decade alone, I think we're going to double everything that's come beforehand. And that's a pretty significant increase. And people are going to have a choice. You're going to have a choice of what vehicle to fly on, and you're going to have a choice of what destination you want to go to.
Mars or...
Mars is a little bit far. We can go to
the
the moon, you can go to low Earth orbit and spend time on a station. There may even be private space stations in the next 10 years. And that just the ability for an individual, okay, you may have to have a fairly big pocketbook to be able to do it, but to have a choice of where you want to go in space, isn't that really, a very significant step that we've taken?
Have you gone? Or
I haven't.
What's up with that?
My pocketbook isn't quite big enough yet.
But you're sort of you're the travel agent. Don't you get like points or something?
You have to experience it first. Well, we do have a much more accessible program. It's called the zero-G weightless flight.
Yeah.
You can experience for a few minutes on a plane what it's like to be floating in space, like the astronauts we saw a minute ago.
Yeah.
I've done that a few times, and that's available at $5,000 per person. And across the U.S. you can do that on a given
I think you
weekend.
got to start doing some crowdfunding so you can get up there.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Like
we have
Alrighty.
to come up with a good idea.
Thank you so much for joining me.